How long will the earth be subjected to the reign of corruption and oppression? Is this just a reality we have to learn to live with? Or does God have some way of cleaning the place up? And what does that mean? When will it happen? The language of the book of Daniel changed after the first few verses of chapter 2 from Hebrew to Aramaic. It stayed that way all through to the end of chapter 7. Remember that the significance of the Aramaic language, since it was the international language of politics and trade, shows that all of these chapters were aimed at a general audience, a non-churched audience. However, in chapter 8, the language switches back to Hebrew, the original language of God's people. In this chapter, Daniel has another vision, 2 years after the previous vision of chapter 7. So the imagery of chapter 7, with its monsters and use of Babylonian symbols, was aimed at the international audience. Chapter 8, on the other hand, is more relevant for God's people. The animals used are familiar to those with a tradition of temple services. The ram and the goat were sacrificial animals connected with the Day of Atonement. And here in this vision, they fight each other. Instead of coming out of the Great Sea as the hybrid animals did, they appear beside a canal in Susa, one of the irrigation canals beside which the Hebrew captives would have wept as they thought of their lost homeland. So, with the appearance of sacrificial animals and cleansing, the focus points to the sanctuary. But why does the sanctuary need cleansing? In the days when the earthly sanctuary was still operational, it wasn't when Daniel had this vision, its whole purpose was to bring reconciliation between God and the people through their forgiveness and cleansing. And this is where something very significant happens. When someone is forgiven, the person doing the forgiving assumes the guilt and responsibility for the one needing the forgiveness. One biblical story that illustrates this principle is the wise woman from Tekoa who tried to reconcile King David with his estranged son Absalom. She pretended some injustice that the king forgave her, but her reply was, "My lord the king, let any blame fall upon me and on the house of my father, but let the king and his throne be innocent." That principle, taken for granted back then, simply says that God's throne becomes contaminated because he's willing to forgive. The earthly Day of Atonement service rectified that with a cleansing ceremony, which Daniel 8 is alluding to. So what is he talking about? It's God's eventual removal of the stain from his creation of everything that he has forgiven for his people, ensuring finality to the long-term reign of evil over our planet. Here is God's assurance that there shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, nor pain. All these things will cease when God steps in and renews. The time period in this chapter reinforces this idea. The reign of evil has a limited shelf life, and it is soon to reach its end. Despite the struggles that are so evident in our broken world, God's initiative of wiping the slate is one of the last acts before all is wound up. This is only made possible by the one who came to earth as a baby, lived life as one of us, died for the penalty of all our wrongs, defeated death by rising from the dead. Jesus is the guarantee that all of the corruption, all of the pollution, whatever that may look like, will one day be wiped clean. And Daniel assures us that God has set some great heavenly clock and has informed us that evil will not continue on forever. It is living on borrowed time. but not for much longer.